Hi, folks. I'm back. Okay, so my name's Ted. I'm working on a game called Rogue Deck Builder. It is a double-decker roguelike deck builder tower defense game that I'm gonna put on Steam. Um, here's what's going on. Yesterday we worked on doing a number of different changes, but I basically left the stream last time. I left the stream with saying, "Hey, I was going to reuse some of this user interface for the end turn functionality, right? This drawing this thing. I was going to use that for the repair, right? Because what I wanted to have was some kind of a repair option for some kind of repair system in the game, right, where you can actually repair your deck, right? And the mostly because it just seems like the game isn't right without it, which is a bit of a quick kind of subjective take. But it, given the set of rules of this game, anytime that like a post hole gets destroyed, right, it actually has a rather large consequence to it. And by that I mean any kind of a joist, like a rim joist or a panel, if I go into my like mode where I can see all the different panels and how they sit on top of each other. Any of that, if the substructure of the deck gets destroyed, then anything that's sitting on top of it is automatically ruined and you lose, or you lose buildings or structures that are sitting on top of the deck if that portion of the deck gets destroyed, right? Well, um, that means, as enemies kind of slowly chip away at post holes, it's almost inevitable that they're going to destroy them, right? So if you don't have a way to repair the deck, then there's this kind of entropy sort of takes over, right? And it gets to a point where you just can't really ever maintain something. It's sort of what I want almost. This end result that I'm aiming for is almost something where you have this risky, fragile, self sustaining entity that is only propped up by its own riskiness, if that makes sense. So the fact that it is large and sprawling makes it vulnerable, but that's also the source of the bonuses that you get. And so it gets to be so powerful and so self maintaining that it's almost like an organism unto itself. It's kind of what I'm aiming for. Um, so with that as the goal, it only seems natural that repair has to fit somewhere into that picture, right? So we have repair now. How does repair work? Repair works this way. So right now I don't have any repair charges. So I've got this little wrench kind of icon here, and I've got no repair charges. And I'm not making any repair charges per turn. So you don't spend energy or man hours for repair charges. Those don't cost anything, right? So it doesn't cost energy. It's not one of these options. It's not a building option. It's something separate. You have to build something in order to get repair charges. So here's what that looks like. So I'm just gonna do my first turn. I've learned a few things about how to play this game. I'm actually starting to realize that a lot of the mistakes that I've been making playing this game are just because I'm not very good at playing it, and I haven't really figured out what what the optimal strategies are yet. So first thing, I'm going to capture this resource because I absolutely need it. So we're going to do that. And now guys are going to come at me, which is, how this game works. It's kind of like a Vampire Survivors, Angry Neighbor deck survivors, HOA survivors. It's kind of ironic because I actually sit on the HOA for my neighborhood. I'm the treasurer. Okay, so I don't have any of the options. So I don't actually have the option for a repair charge, which kind of sucks. I can't really pick that to put it in my deck. I'm going to pick the FRW turret. So what this is it's a fire rate width turret. The fire rate goes up as the width of the deck panel that it sits on goes up. It's a slightly more risky gambit. Oh yeah, that's right. So what I wanted, I'll explain. What I wanted to have was that the start, you always start with turret, a basic turret, and a basic repair bay in your hand or in the deck already. So this kind of similar design decision as what you might see in a game like Peglin. In Peglin, you start with like just rocks in your deck, right? And if you want to get a reference for Peglin, I did play it on one of the previous episodes. I can't remember which one, but if you go back my back catalog of streams, you'll see it. So Peglin's in there for sure. But just go get the game and play it. Peglin's deck of pebbles that you can, like Plinko cards that you can throw down, starts with just a standard rock, and it starts with a standard knife. And the rock is really basic. The rock is just a regular Plinko ball, so it hits the things. And then the knife doesn't do much damage when you just hit ordinary pegs, but it does great damage when you're in critical hit kind of condition. And so they kind of balance each other off. And I sort of feel that way with turrets and repair bays. Turrets are just, you know, you want a little bit of firepower. Repair bay is, it's just something where I put it down, and then for each, I get +1 repair per turn if I put it down. So actually it's pretty high powered if you think about it, because the cost is only 4 energy. But then I gain a pretty large return on that investment over time, because for every subsequent turn, I'm going to gain 1 repair charge, right? So I'm going to place that down as like my first building, right? To me, this seems like really logical, really obvious. And then I'm just going to, now I've got 3 energy left, so I'm just going to kind of continue to keep playing here. So we'll do that. Now, obviously, I'm out of energy, out of resources. I have to end my turn. One thing you'll also notice is now I get 1 repair charge per turn, right? So after I finish this defense phase, right, I will get 1 repair. So we're going to do that. Guys are going to come at me, as is, you know, the way that this goes. And if I can defend my deck, then that's awesome, because I will, you know, one thing I noticed too about this game, like having I'm actually really happy that okay, so I can either pick an FRA turret. This is, it's kind of one of the more powerful cards in the game, actually. This is the fire rate area turret. Okay, so what that means is the fire rate goes up as a function of the area of the deck panel that it's sitting on. So I'm going to pick that one because that's kind of my aspirational target. That's kind of like, that's sort of where I want to be in the future in terms of possible things I could put down in my deck. So I definitely want that. I'm going to do a joist. So, okay, what you'll notice is I now have a repair charge. Okay, so I can actually repair my deck. I can go here. This is allowed. Basically, I can repair anything that has a bar that's anything where the health of it is less than 100%. I can repair. And so I've got this little like repair like wrench. Obviously, it's not the best graphic for it, but it's acceptable, I suppose. So I can do that, or not. Now, what I've kind of learned about this game is it's actually better to, in the early stages, it's better to kind of go for broke with placing panels down early on and accumulating more resources like early on. It seems to me much better to do that than to start putting down a lot of defensive turrets or a lot of repair bays or a lot of other kinds of stuff. Because the thing is, you don't really need those things early on the game because it's much easier to defend the deck for the first few phases, right? But then as it starts to ramp up, as there's more and more and more guys, you're going to want to be collecting the dividends of your early... Actually, this game is a lot like stock market investing, the more that I think about it. It really is about if in the very early stages you can avoid spending, right? And you're just purely investing, then by spending what I mean is placing down something like this, right? So something expensive, right? Or even just a regular turret. That's actually, I would call that spending. Because you don't really need it on in the early stages of deck defense. But later on in the game, having large amounts of these things that are high powered becomes really important. So I think I'm going to go for this one too. I'm going to go for this resource. I'm just going to try and gun it there and see if I can, defend my deck long enough. I have this sort of wrench thing, which is kind of cool. So I at least get a few repair charges. There's other things that I'm kind of noticing about this, like these guys, they kind of like they almost like bounce off of the rocks. Like, okay, so I finished that phase. Now I get the option to choose a card. I have been thinking, just based on the way that this game plays, that this design. So I'm not gonna keep this design where I choose a card after every wave. I think this is crap, and here's why it's crap. You get the choice too often, right? So what I think I actually want, and maybe towards the end of the stream I'll show you some examples of it. And it's a thing that is common in the roguelike genre, especially the roguelike deck builder genre. It's in Peglin, it's in Inscription, it's in Hades, kind of, a little bit. But what I want actually is, instead of you just automatically going to this screen where you build your deck up by picking after every fight, I actually want there to be different things in the world that you must expand towards, that when you go there, when you build a deck panel to get to that place, right, and then you walk there, then you, like, maybe one of those things, just like we have resources out there in the world, right? Maybe one of the things we have out there in the world is cards, right? And so you have to go and build your deck up to the point to where you can get the card. And when you get the card, now you can use it. Okay, so maybe that's just like one thing that you get. But what if there's other things that are like other events, other kinds of... so in Peglin, they have like question mark stuff. Like that's kind of like saying, well, I don't know, like we don't know what it's going to be. Maybe you build all the way up to a thing that's like an event marker, and then when you get that, maybe you get the option to get a bunch of extra cards in your deck, or maybe you get the option to remove a card. Maybe you get the option to reduce the cost of a card. Maybe you get a pile of free resources. Maybe you get a one-time use card, like the crafting bench or something. The point is that it adds in a lot of other elements that are not just pick a card. Picking the card, the building option cards will be relevant. They will be important, but I don't want to be giving this, because what I notice is as I play, I notice that I'm frequently skipping this because I'm presented with this choice too often, right? I'm presented with this choice so much that I frequently don't want to take it because I've already kind of picked the stuff that I want to go into this deck, right? I only really want these things. And now, granted, there's not very much that's like actually available in the game, but I don't really want a lot of what is here. So that to me is just kind of interesting. It's just kind of something that I've noticed in terms of how I'm actually playing this game. Okay, so again, I'm going for broke. I'm trying to get, I'm saying, you know what, I will defend my deck. I'm going to try and get to as many resources as quickly as possible and kind of see what I'm doing there. And this is tough because I've kind of put myself, yeah, crap. Shouldn't have done it. Shouldn't have done it. Shouldn't have done it. Shouldn't have done it. That was stupid. Maybe I can hit that guy. Yeah, and see now I'm mauling because of that. Oh, crap, I can't get there. I'm going to lose that one too. That was dumb. So again, like, yeah, and look also this like picked the same, whatever. That was dumb. It's okay. Keep going. You know, keep on moving. I'm gonna do a joist here, 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 here. Screw it. I know I want to get to that side of the panel, but I'm not. I will do something else. But I definitely want to get this panel going quickly. On the next turn, I'll be able to do an FRW turret, which helps. So, what I found now, though, with this style of play is I'm starting to get to a point where the player is able to push back a little bit more. So it's a little bit more balanced in favor of the player now. But only if you pick the right strategy. If you pick crappy strategies, it's not going to be all that balanced in favor of the player. It's going to suck. So, you know, if you suck, then the game sucks. All right. So we're not going to do any of those. I'm going to repair this, and I'm going to repair this. And that. I'm not going to panel that off yet because I can buy one of these. And now that should have a slightly higher firepower. Now I have 2 charges. Yeah, it's a bit of a challenge here. What do I really want to do? So the last time I played, I also noticed, and I'm mauling a little bit. That's going to be harder to defend. I'm also out of turret. I'm also out of those charges. Running out of energy. Can I defend that? Maybe. The thing is, I can't really... I'm going to do something I wouldn't ordinarily do. I'm going to try and do this. I'm going to build there. All right. Probably not the best use of energy, but that's okay. I'm hoping that my FRW turret helps to defend a little bit on that other side, so I don't have to put a ton of defense power into that. So that thing, you'll notice it shoots a lot faster than my other ones, so that's good. Okay, and I get presented with that choice just too much. I'm going to have to get rid of that. That's my weakest, most least defended. I can't do another FRW turret. I can put this panel down, but now I still can't walk there. So I can do a joist here, and I can do a panel. So I can now at least like walk and defend my deck a little bit better. And then on this side, I've got this. I think I'm going to try and do something like here to get both of those resources. But again, I think you're starting, maybe what you'll start to notice is I'm kind of bumping up against things where it's like, wouldn't it be great if I could have more energy per day, right? Wouldn't it be great if there's something I could build that lets me do, like increase that? Okay, so there's a card that needs to go in the game, right? There's things I'm noticing that I'm kind of like, it would be great if I had that, but I don't have that. Another thing too would be like maybe something where I get more repair charges. So you imagine I have the same repair building, but it functions like the fire rate width turret, which is to say that it gives me a number of repair charges that is per turn that is equal to the width of the panel that it's sitting on, right? So then I could get maybe 3 or 4, a bunch of them per turn, and all I've got to do is spend some of these resources to get it. So that to me feels like it would be better. Because I'm really, I don't have many repair charges actually. So we shall see. The last time I played, so I played a little bit right before stream. And I noticed a few, actually like, that was a good game because I got so far in the game that I actually had to quit playing it because I ended up triggering a bug. So I feel like I'm actually doing pretty, oh, there's a bug right there. All right, stop. We got some programming to do. That shouldn't happen. Okay, that definitely should not happen. So basically the rule is, why do I have 93 stone? What? Well, that's interesting. Okay. And I'm getting 2 a turn. That shouldn't happen. So my guess, so first of all, a few things. Wow, you can congratulate me on being a crappy programmer. I probably would have failed some, programming test or whatever. Few things. So the rule is that whenever a post hole that's supporting a structure gets destroyed, then the deck collapses, right? So the panel that it's sitting on collapses. That's sitting on it collapses. So that was right. That happened because this one got taken out. But this didn't get destroyed. This building didn't get destroyed. I've noticed that it does destroy turrets, and I think I've noticed that it destroys the repair bays, but it doesn't destroy these things. So something's up there. This weirdness is probably some kind of integer underflow, I'm guessing. Maybe the amount that it took away was more than it should be. Maybe it was like more than it should be by a lot. The only way that this says 93 is if I underflowed 0, I'm guessing. So maybe what I did is I don't think I have it as like an unsigned integer field. Maybe I do. I might have underflowed and then gone all the way back to like uint 32 max or something. Or maybe it's trying to interpret a signed 32-bit number as if it's unsigned, in which case we'd be getting garbage here. Basically, I've got garbage here, and I have to figure that out. So there's definitely some bugs when panels get destroyed, without a doubt. So I'm gonna have to fix that. So that's your daily playthrough of the game. It's actually kind of like starting the stream with just a daily playthrough. So what kind of problems do we have here? And then how do we solve them? Because what I basically need to do is set up an easy debug situation that allows me to quickly test out that condition, right? So one thing I could do to quickly test that out is I could just, and come to think of it, I probably should do this. There should be some kind of a building debug mode where I put the card in my hand that I want to test, and where nothing costs anything, right? Because what I want to do is I don't want to have to play as far as I did. So first of all, I'm also going to say, like, this is good news, actually. And a lot of people would look at this kind of situation where I've, oh no, I've got all these bugs, and like, oh crap, like, fine, yeah, bad, whatever. But actually it's good because it means that the game held my interest long enough that I could even run into these problems, right? Like, I just entertained myself for like 20 minutes, and like, you might not think that that's very long, but like, actually for a game to entertain people for 20 minutes it's not bad. Like, if it's not, so boring, right? So I successfully entertained myself for 20. I've been entertaining myself for so long with this game that I'm actually starting to bump up against the limits of the technical design, which was intentional because I never really set out to have the technical side of it be super robust to begin with. So the fact that I'm playing long enough to bump up against those walls is a really good thing, I think. Um, it means, yeah, I'm gonna have to fix those bugs, and that's fine. Like, now's the time to fix them. But if you can make something where it's like just with a few simple rules or a few simple systems, it's actually engaging enough to where you can be causing bugs or like, making it crash or whatever, that's good. So actually the end goal for really any of the stuff that I'm doing is to get to a point where the game just crashes. I play so long that I just bump up against the constraints or whatever, I make it crash. That's fine. Like, that's actually a really good outcome of a design process because it means that there's really not that much that's wrong with the design, and more of the problems are with just the programming, right? Just the like, we didn't allocate a big enough world, right? We didn't set aside enough memory for this. We know this thing like isn't robust enough, so like let's, tighten the screws. That's great. So I'm gonna tighten a few screws now, and here's how we're gonna do it. First thing, I think it is wise generally to characterize what the problem is. Okay, so this seems like this is definitely along the right dimension. So I actually do have, I don't keep a JIRA, but I do have like a big bug list that's just a text file that I just kind of work through. There's an unknown crash. Okay, well that's not very useful. Actually, we do have a few known crashes. Okay, so, but this also seems like if a panel, any rock, let's elaborate on this. Not only that, but I'm guessing the rock accumulation rate and rock totals are underflowing somehow. It's the only explanation. That would give me weird numbers, weird large numbers for resource count and resource accumulation rate. Okay. Relatedly, it also seems like certain kinds of structures, for example, deck panels, for example, fire rate with turrets, don't get destroyed when the deck panel they are sitting on collapses, right? So those structures, we noticed just now that the fire rate width turret didn't get destroyed. So that was a bug. I actually should write down the bug that I ran into on my previous playthrough. The reason that I had to quit my previous playthrough, I think I played for about 20 or 30 minutes, and then I got to a point where the enemies spawned into the rocks. So I think that the game picked a spawn point for like two of the enemies where they were like inside of some of the rocks. And obviously we can't have that because then, they just get stuck and then they can't come attack you, and that's bad. So got to figure out what the deal is with that. Um, so yes, um, gotta figure out that. So one of my games could no longer be played because enemies spawned into rocks and couldn't move towards the deck for me to defend it. Now, another, one quick way that you could solve a problem like that as well is to just have, and this is probably why you see this kind of thing in a lot of games like, I don't know, Command and Conquer actually sometimes has missions where you have, you build up your base or whatever, and guys are coming at your base, right? And then you're just kind of like, ah, crap, I gotta just defend this. But they're not like, defend it until everyone's dead. They're like, defend it for 15 minutes, right? So they put a timer on it. And I think that actually solves a lot of those problems because if something was janky in like their collision geometry or like one of the guys couldn't get to you or whatever, kind of doesn't matter because the timer will run out anyway. So that's another option, right? Is you could just have like a deck defense timer, and when the time runs out, that's just how it is. There's actually that solves another that maybe solves a separate problem, which is if I don't actually like right now the transition from the deck defense phase to the next phase is a little bit jarring. Although again, I think that's because I have it automatically go into a card selection screen right afterwards, and we're going to get rid of that. So we're going to replace that with something else. Instead, we're going to replace that with there are cards in the world, and you put something, you go to you have to build your deck towards the cards. We have to build your deck towards these options. So if you choose to interact with those things, if I choose to pick up the cards, if I choose the event, then I am left to deal with the consequences of that, right? So that might be better all on its own. But yeah, I think enemies spawning into rocks, I'm not sure that I'll look at it right now, but it's something to look at. So this sort of bug right here, though, we definitely got to have. We definitely got to like fix this because I would say that's like pretty darn fundamental to being able to play the game. Period. That's one of the consequences is if the deck panel that it's sitting on goes away, then the building goes away. So we gotta get rid of that. So that's the bug. So how do we, okay, now that we've characterized it, how do we start fixing it? How do we start figuring out what's going on? So what I would first do always with any of these things is quickly and easily put it into a mode where I can reproduce the problem, right? Now, a lot of people have all these different opinions about it. Some people, they do like test-driven development and, write all these unit tests and break everything down into like a million little pieces of functions or whatever. I'm not really a fan of that because I think that a lot of times it can just, first of all, it's a lot of effort to do that. Also, it can break up the cohesiveness of your program. It can make it like difficult to quickly reason, or it kind of breaks. It can break a lot of the context, having to break everything out into functions that you're like running tests on, and you're just testing like little pieces of the thing. You're not necessarily testing the whole thing, which doesn't always yield what you might think it does. So I could go and I could take all the functions that are currently in this game. I could write a unit test suite for it, and I could run that test suite, and I could maybe I'll find stuff, maybe I won't. But the thing about it is, right now at this very moment, what I have is a problem that I can reproduce. Right? I know how to reproduce it. I have a crude kind of theory about what is causing the problem or where the problem is happening, right? I have a basic theory. So I've got some basic like scientific hypothesis about what is causing the problem, right? And I also have a way that I can program the game to kind of set up the situation that I want to test. And so I think it's much more focused and directed of an approach if saying, you know what, I know what the problem is. I just need an easy way to set up the problem, set up that condition, and test it. So I'm gonna program in a mode that allows me to set up that problem situation and test it. And then I'm gonna reproduce it, right, in that mode. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try some different fixes, and then I'm gonna see if the fixes accomplish the thing, right? And then when I'm done with this work, I'm going to hang on to my debug mode, right? So what it'll just be like a flag in my code. It'll just be like a Boolean flag that most of the time when I'm playing and most of the time when I'm in debug mode or like debug development mode, most of the time it's off. Most of the time it's just I'm just playing the game. I'm not playing the game in this mode, right? However, occasionally when I run into a problem like this one, I can just re-enable the mode, set up the thing I need to set up to test it, play the game, test it, and, you know, make sure that the thing does what it's supposed to do. Is this a test suite? Is this, you know, the most robust way of going about the thing? Is this something that you would do if you were trying to solve the problem for NASA and human lives were on the line? No. Is it something that fits this context of like an independent game developer who's just trying to try out a new game concept and needs to move relatively quickly in order to do that, but also needs the game to be within a reasonable degree of robustness? I think it fits that pretty well, right? So that's what I'm going to do. I don't know. I mean, I never worked at NASA, so I don't really know what they do. I have read stories of what they do. So the first thing would be to set up a zero cost building mode, right? And I'm actually going to like move this into a different, let's see, I'm just going to change. Move it to a different source control branch. I don't know, deck panel destruction bugs. It's basically what this is. So now I have like free reign to kind of, I have free reign to basically try out all this stuff that I want to try out. First thing first is I need to have some kind of a low cost mode that I can trigger with a Boolean flag. So let's do that. I want a zero cost building mode. How do we do that? Well, we need to find the logic where the cost, see this, get cost for card type. I have one function. Oh wait, no, I've also, these are for the cards, but I'm going to do it here too. All I'm going to do is this. I'm just going to pass in a Boolean that's like, cheap debug mode, right? And so, and I think this also has like cost dot. So I have this notion of a cost, repair charge cost. I'm going to make the repair charge cost be 0. Okay. If cheap debug mode return cost. So this is basically, this gets called pretty much everywhere for all of the cards. So if we're in the cheap debug mode, then everything is free, right? So that's kind of our cheat mode. So we're going to put that in. Great. Now let's try and compile the thing. Compiler's not going to love us. But see, what's great is that I only really call this in one place. So there's only like one place where we have the problem. So like line number 93, where we're using this. Get starter card. Okay. So I'm just going to put this right here in this scope. Cheap debug mode equals true. And all this is if I want to change that, now I call this get starter card quite a lot, so I might need to like if I'm really thinking about like the upstream place where I want this to happen, I kind of don't really want to be changing this in a lot of different places. I actually am not a huge fan of doing that. So I am probably going to actually move this. I'm going to move this up as something that you pass in. So now we're going to get the compiler errors somewhere else. Now we're probably going to get it. So now we'll see where else we get it. Right. Get it in the calling functions. But I'm basically just kind of following the compiler. So line 110, right? Okay, so yeah, the compiler does not like this. This get starter card function, right? Which fine, like setup starting deck is a function that takes a game state. And again, what I want is this cheap debug mode thing to be like to be upstream. What I want is for it to have, I want for there to be kind of one canonical place in the code where I set that. And that's just something that is like a startup variable or something of that nature. There's one place where I set that, right? And then it just, everything downstream of it gets modified in response to that. I don't want to have like 2 or 3 different places where I set this flag because that's going to suck to maintain, right? I'll forget like where they are. I won't know that there's more than one. So I'm just kind of, what I'm doing is I'm kind of like reasoning my way backwards from, I'm sort of reasoning my way backwards from like the point where this stuff is called. So now it's really not going to like this, right? Oops. So now what other things are we going to get? Okay, so line 68, we don't like that. Oh wait, that's in startup, I think. Startup. Line 68. Okay. Shuffle card choices. Okay. Sounds good. Again, I'm just going to pass in cheap debug mode I'm going to pass that in here. And I'm kind of like, what I'm doing is I'm forcing the decision. I'm forcing like, where am I going to have to make that? Where am I going to have to set up that? Where's that upstream place where I'm going to have to set that thing to true, right? And then it's just going to downstream. Everything else will be reliant on that. So let's see, game startup 628. Okay. So this might be a good place to do it, right? In the startup function, right here. So I'm going to sort of tentatively say that this is where we do it in the startup function. And now maybe there's other places where I have to use this flag, so I might need the flag to be some kind of state variable that, you know, so maybe I set it on game state. I'm okay with that. But, and then we just never touch it like while the game is running. That's a possible thing that we'll do. But for now, I'm going to try this. Equals true. And then we're going to do, so again, I'm not really, I'm not saying that I know what the structure is going to be. I'm kind of like, I'm kind of discovering the structure by making it, right? I'm sort of figuring my way through like what it's going to be. So 638. Okay. Okay, that's good. We can pass cheap debug mode in here. Right? So again, upstream, this is the upstream variable, and I'm passing it downstream into all these other functions, set up starting deck, shuffle card choices, right? So far good. Not a bad decision. Next, what kinds of problems do we run into? Okay, game main 406. This is where I'm thinking we might need that state variable. Shuffle card choices. So I previously had this state variable set inside of this scope here, which is game post content load setup. What is this? Kind of a long backstory for like what this is, but basically it is a function that I came up with that gets called immediately after the game is loaded in graphics and sound, because on some systems I load all that stuff on a different thread, and then when it's done I call this sort of a little bit of extra stuff afterwards. So that's currently where it's getting set up. I don't like this. So instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace that option, and I'm going to do it as a state variable on game state. And I'm going to do it maybe right around here where all my card stuff is. Zero cost debug mode. Cheap debug mode. Everything's cheap. Okay, so now it's a variable on game state. So that changes things quite a bit. And it means that I'm going to have to change a lot of the structure of what I've done here. So now I'm just going to set, you can really set this anywhere, so I kind of don't really care. All I care is that it gets set in game initialized memory. That's like where it needs to be set. Maybe I can just do something like, you know, there might be some stuff for like debug visualization modes or just debugging modes that we might want to use. So I'll kind of look in, yeah, gameplay configuration, utilities setup. Yeah, so here might be something like, here's where I might have it just like, debug modes. Right. So cheap debug mode. Now, you notice that I don't need to have it here anymore inside of this post content load scope because it's actually a variable on game state now. So, and this gets called after that variable has already been set, right? So I don't really need to pass it in anymore because I'm just passing game state in there. And I don't need to pass it into shuffle card choices because I'm just passing game state into there. So now I'm going to recompile and I'm going to get a bunch of other compile errors. I'm sure of it. Okay, so startup 632. Right, what's it complaining about? It's complaining about, hey, the function signature asks for this Boolean variable, you're not giving it to us, right? And I'm not. Where's that referenced from? card.cpp 106, right? So let's go back into card.cpp 106. And all that we need to do now is, because we're passing game state, we don't need to pass this anymore, right? Instead, what we can do is we can do this equals game, it's just off game state. And I know a bunch of people are gonna be like, oh, the global variables, blah, blah. But like the thing is, actually global state's really not that bad if you just cordon off the different things and you don't, like, I'm not, like, there's no other place in the code where that gets modified, right? It gets set, like, it's like Ron Popeil's Showtime rotisserie oven. You know, you set it and forget it, and then that's that. Like, if you don't ever touch it somewhere else, then it's fine. Honestly, you can have global variables if you just don't touch it. So I have no intention of touching this. You know, I set it in one place. I have no intention of ever, nor would anybody that I work with, you know, if they did that, I'd slap them on the wrist. I'd be like, why are you doing that? So it's, there are these conventions that we employ, and maybe there are ways to enforce the conventions. You know, I think that's kind of more of like what Jonathan Blow is and his team at Thekla are researching or like playing around with Jai, is more of these kinds of like house rules, right? I think I'm more of a fan of that kind of approach than something where, oh, you can never have global variables. So not a fan of that. So, you know, I'm just going to change these now so that, you know, it's going to be, setup starting deck is fine. Get starter card, that's okay. That's still like downstream. So let's see where we are. Startup 640, okay. 640. Shuffle card choices. So what? Startup 56, okay. That's where the calling function. So shuffle card choices, again, I passed in cheap debug mode. And actually what I want to do is just call that off a game state. So I'm going to do that. Hey, we compiled and we didn't spend all day writing unit tests. Thank you. What's the consequence of this? Oh, wait. Okay, yeah, so the consequence of this would be, I'll just do one turn just so you can see. I'll just defend the deck. And then when you see that I have the choices, it should say like, it should just have the cards. And then I think if the cost is, if there's no cost, it just doesn't even display a cost. I think that's how I've got it programmed right now. But I'm not 100% sure of that. Yeah. So if it's a zero cost card, then I think you can just grab it. And I think I can just put stuff down and then it doesn't cost anything. Yeah. Yeah. So all of these cards now, they don't cost anything. So that's my cheap debug mode. what I'm going to change next, and I don't think we have really much time for it for today on stream, but the next thing that I'm going to change is I'm going to make it so that these cost nothing as well, right? So I'm gonna set up a special cheap debug mode to make it so that this doesn't cost anything. And then what I can do is I can sort of I can pre-fill my hand with the things that I want to test, and then on the first turn, I just go and I build a panel that's got a resource sitting in it, and it's got the thing that I want to get destroyed, that I want to see destroyed, right? I'm setting up the condition that I want to test, and then I just allow the enemies to like destroy that panel, right? And then just kind of see the result and test it. So that's how I can kind of quickly, relatively quickly, get to the situation that I want to test, right? And that didn't involve, you know, writing a bunch of unit tests first. That didn't involve breaking my program into a million little pieces and, you know, scattering it like the wind. All it involved was just, hey, I have a hypothesis, a scientific hypothesis about that I can test, right? About what might be going on. And so why don't I just make it easy to set up the experiment that I want to run, like make a mode for that, get into the mode, set it up, play around with it, help me to solve my problem, wash my hands of it when we're done. So that's what we're doing. So I would say that particular thing has been successful. So we have a zero cost ordinary special building card. That mode's in. I'll go work on the other mode tomorrow, or in my spare time next. But I think with that said, it's kind of a good sort of stopping point. So if there are any questions, I am more than happy to answer them at this point. All right, it's been fun. See you soon.